excited to introduce to you Miss Kelly Jo Baute, and she is a lecturer at the School of Public Health in Bloomington. She has a unique combination of academic and research training in kinesiology and bioanthropology, and has extensive experience as a health and fitness professional. She has over 15 years in the health and fitness industry, in roles from group exercise instruction, personal training, health and fitness programming, and administration. So I'm going to be... And her least favorite. So we're really excited to hear what she has to present today. We'll save the last 10 minutes for questions at the end. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. How are you all cognitively functioning this afternoon? Are you waning? Are you starting? What's happened? What's going on? Seriously, there's a physiological mechanism that's going on. What's happening? Yeah, you're getting tired, right? Things are shutting down. So we're not moving, we're not creating energy, we're getting tired. It takes energy to make energy. So in order for us to get a little more energetic, I want you to stand up and set back down and stand up and set back down. Just a few times. Just a couple of times. Okay? Because I can set up here or stand up here and tell you lots and lots of things, but you guys are starting to wane and you're not going to retain any of it. So I would rather you remember a few things than none of it. And even if it's just the sit to stand to get some juices flowing, to get the cognition rolling, then that would be great. That works for me. Otherwise, Alethea did a great job introducing me, pronounced my name correctly. Sometimes I go as Kelly, sometimes I go as Kelly Jo. It's depending on what kind of mood I'm feeling. But today I'm going to talk to you all about aquatic-based exercise and cognitive performance. Okay? We're going to go through some of our learning objectives. This is actually my first time at this conference. So as she said, I've been in fitness for many years. This is my first time at this conference, and it's been a great experience. Very close-knit group, and I think that's awesome. They did a great job on getting me rolling to do this presentation, requesting that we construct some learning objectives, which is what we do in our academic courses. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to learn which components exercise really makes an effect on when we're talking about cognitive performance or exercise and physical activity within that mechanism, and which mechanisms of exercise make a positive impact. So we know there's a lot of health-related impacts, but we're going to talk about some of the psychological benefits. Then we're going to look and see, is aquatic-based fitness the same as land-based when we are looking at cognitive outcomes? And then we want to look at the importance of utilizing aquatic-based fitness programming and why it's important. So, first learning objective. What components of cognitive performance are being affected? Any ideas? So I've given you a little bit of a list, right? Speed of information processing, spatial abilities, getting around, right? Executive functioning. So those are the big things, like really being able to think about stuff, critical thinking, long-term planning. And attention. There's a couple different types of attention. We're going to talk about that as well. But when I say to you, what is cognitive functioning, what do you say when I ask you that question? And I don't ask rhetorical questions. So lady in the back that I spoke with in the elevator. Memory. That's right. And I can't remember her name. Lori. Okay? Memory. Right? Memory is cognitive functioning, right? Got another hand. Physical therapy student, right? The capacity to learn. So memory, learning, right? Is learning just a bunch of memories? Right? What else? Anyone? Lori again. Communication. Okay, so social interaction. Is social interaction a cognitive functioning? To an extent, yes. Okay, so we're going to look at some of these specific mechanisms that really, or some of these outcomes that are affected by exercise. And this was a study that was done some time ago, but it's a good study, and I like this study, so I want to talk about it a little bit. And it's a large sample. You can see there's 187 women there that were put into either an exercise condition or a control condition. Exercise condition would participated in group exercise for 1 hour, 2 times a week. It says 42 weeks, but it was actually a full year. There were so many weeks within the year that they gave everybody a little bit of time off so that, if they wanted to travel during holiday. This was actually done in England, so they truly referred to it as holiday, during the Christmas breaks, holiday breaks, so that people would not miss. Because what do we know about people when they miss their exercise? They never come back, do they? They fall off the wagon, they're gone. So they planned it out, give people planned reprieve from the program. They actually had really good adherence to this. The classes covered all health-related components of health, right? So what would that be? What are the health-related components? Who are the group exercise people in here? Who teaches exercise? Muscular strength. Muscular endurance. Flexibility. Thank you. Thank you. Pulled that one for the... But he's right. He's got those. So the class covered, it was a well-defined, well-described class, okay? So covering all those components, as well as, if you look here, social interaction, which Lori mentioned somewhat with communication a moment ago, and enjoyment. Who likes to have fun at what they do? Why are not everyone's hands going up, right? Everybody likes to, no, maybe not. Everybody likes to have fun, right? When it's fun, are you more likely to participate? Absolutely, right? That's why they tell us not to do that bad stuff, because it's fun, right? It'd be a little dangerous. Just kidding. Results of this study is the exercise group had all good improvements in general health, as well as sociability, mood, outlook, and well-being, which I want you to remember, reaction time, and memory. Microphone. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Additionally, he's giving me hand signals. I'm like, what? Anyway, additionally, those who had mood scores that were lowest in anxiety and depression and stress had the greatest improvement. All right, so again, exercise, improvements. The control group, no improvement at all. So that's important. This is important. That was in an older group. This is a more recent study. It's actually still in press with Pesce and all, in which, and if you're interested in this topic, I want you to look into Pesce. She's an Italian researcher that does really good work in this area. And what she is trying to do, okay, so we know exercise helps. Is anybody in here going to defute that claim? Anyone in here? I mean, I know I can probably go through thousands of articles as well as you, and all of them are going to say it improved cognitive function, it improved well-being, it improved health outcomes, right? We know this, but why is this happening? And is it in all populations? And is it with all modes of exercise? So Pesce and all looked at kids, because it's important that if you're going to start a behavior, when are you going to start it? Who has some bad habits? Again, probably all the hands should go up. When did those bad habits start? Right? So you're trying to create a behavior. So with Pesce et al., they looked at kids with typical motor development and children with atypical motor development, or children who had motor development issues. And again, a large sample, 250 kids. Again, a fairly long length of a study, a 6-month study, in which they had a physical education intervention program with or without a cognitive focus. And there were 3 different groups. So there was a generalist-led group. So think of a primary education teacher teaching a physical activity class. All right, so that's a generalist-led class. A specialist-led class would be a physical education teacher actually teaching the class. All right? The cognitively engaging specialist-led, again, is a specialist-led, all right, physical education teacher teaching the physical education class, but with higher cognitively demanding games and tasks. All right? So, if it's harder, do you learn it better? If it's more challenging, are you going to get more from it? So, what was it that I told you guys to remember a little bit ago? Circle it. Well-being. Don't forget that. You're holding on to that. So, what did they find? Typically developed children had the greatest benefit from the cognitively enriched specialist-led program. Again, more challenging tasks cognitively. So the ball passes were a little bit more challenging. They were finger tapping, different types of motor control movements that they had them do. So they were a little bit more cognitively challenging. And what this group had was a better improvement in what was known as receptive attention. Does anybody know what receptive attention is? So it's the ability to focus on one item or one task for a few minutes, go to something else for another given period of time, and then switch to something else. Do all those tasks well and under a time pressure. So again, switching from task to task. These kids improved. The children who had the best benefit with expressive attention were the children who had atypical motor development. Expressive attention is the ability to find a task, get on that task, and stay with it throughout interruption. So you might be having, it's like watching TV and your mom's talking to you. My youngest son, he is apparently expressively attentive to the television because he blocks me out completely, right? So again, those children, again, had the best improvement in expressive attention. These are really important findings. And I can go into more detail, but this is actually going into more of a neuromotor issue and probably a little bit beyond what we're going to talk about today. But keep those things in mind. Why now is exercise benefiting people? So none of us dispute it, right? We all are pretty much committed to that. That's why we're here, to learn more about health, to learn more about the benefits of different types of programming. Well, here is one of the mechanisms that's probably the biggest potential for what's going on structurally. So, you learn something, and what happens? What happens when you learn something? Do you just get a flash drive? You make a neural connection. Thank you, Janet. Right? Janet. Well, here's what it is. It's something known as hippocampal neurogenesis. So that's a big word that I won't, or two big words that you don't have to remember, but you can if you want. What's the hippocampus? Part of the brain? Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of a way station for memories and information. But essentially it does this. Consolidates new memories, all right? Emotional responses, communication there, navigation, spatial orientation. Those are all cognitive functions, all right? So if we look at this, you have to suggest, or this suggests that all of these things you'd see improvements in all of these things. Well, how are we going to test that? Well, whenever somebody has an idea, the first thing they do is put a mouse to the test, right? If they can do it, then maybe we can sustain it too. This is a study done a few years ago by Prague et al., and they looked at running conditions in sedentary or non-mobile mice, young and old. So the control group did nothing. They did not have access to a running wheel. Where the running group did, they had unlimited access to a running wheel. And the results were that the running group, both the young and the old mice, and it's kind of like dog years, these are a few months old mice and a few weeks old, had enhanced learning and enhanced hippocampal neurogenesis, or greater hippocampal volume. The learning that they actually were able to measure was a swim task. So this is another reason that I thought this would be interesting, because the mice had to swim. And you guys are aquatics people, so I thought, okay, they'll be all right with the mice. But they did. They were able to, with the actual swim task, they were able to either do better or worse on the control condition did not improve, but the running group were able to do their swim in a faster time. So, all right, maybe it happens in mice. Does it happen in people? Well, here's a study that was done just recently, Erickson et al. Again, another large sample, okay, and fairly long. All right, so again, what are you seeing a theme with these studies? Most of them are of somewhat duration, right? These aren't acute bouts, but actually chronic bouts of exercise. So again, two different conditions, walking or flexibility and toning. And again, remember this, instructor-led. We'll come back to these things. After 1 year, those in the flexibility group had a 1.4% decrease in hippocampal volume. Those in the walking group had a 2% increase. Normal aging shows a decline in hippocampal volume. After a certain period of time, later in life, people tend to have a 1 to 2% decline annually. So you can look at it as, all right, one, it slowed, this group here, the flexibility group, maybe slowed that degenesis down a little bit. But with this is a big increase. So what else is important here is those who worked harder or had higher heart rate sustained did better on memory. So that's an intensity mechanism, right? So what do we know about intensity with exercise? If it's really hard, are people going to be as likely to adhere to it? Probably not. Higher intensity exercise is less appealing to people, especially for novices. So one, these people, this shows they enjoyed the activity. And there was a lady in here this morning, Marty, talking about walking speed, and she's right. Faster walking velocities at older ages has a decreased mortality. So it's a good thing. So again, this is a suggestion that, okay, we're talking about mode, walking. But intensity might be a factor that makes the improvements a little bit more ameliorated. If we look then at aquatic-based fitness, and just so you know, there's not a whole lot that's done specifically on aquatic fitness. So if all of you guys leave here today and go to Google Scholar or wherever you do your searches for your lit and do aquatic fitness and cognitive functioning, you're probably not going to find a lot. There's some stuff done with fibromyalgia. I'm going to actually talk about, this is the one right here, a study that actually looks at fibromyalgia in warm water. Yeah, is this the same one? Yeah. Okay. Distortion? You're getting signals? Can you hear me? All right. So I'll just walk around with it. Okay, so exercise and warm water. So up till now, we've really just looked at land-based exercise. I was asked to come here and talk about aquatic-based exercise and cognitive functioning. Again, there's not a lot out there, very little. This study, again, this was really looking at decreasing in pain. They threw in some cognitive functioning. It's kind of like a lot of these studies are really looking at something else, and they throw in some cognitive tests as well. It's an opportunity to get some data, right? Again, so looking at decreases in pain with cognitive functioning in fibromyalgia population. Again, a large sample, fairly lengthy time, 3 weeks, 3 sessions a week for 16 weeks of, again, looking at all those health-related components, so aerobic, strength, mobility, as well as relaxation, okay? And what they found is it significantly improved their pain threshold, tender point, self-reported pain severity, and cognitive functioning, while there was no improvement in the control group. All right? Moving on. We got another study here, done in the water. Dr. Ragland, who I work with at IU, he and I collected this data actually a couple years ago with a grant from the NSF, and he's got this actually, I think, in the works for publication right now. So psychological benefits associated with a single bout of either land or water-based exercise. Again, a large sample. These individuals were rather persistent in exercise, so most of these people had been participating in exercise for quite a while. 3 different conditions. They could do deep water, shallow water, or step aerobics, their choice. The design of the study was what we would call a naturalistic design, so no assignment. We did not assign people to the condition. They chose. So it was a volitional opportunity, right? They got to choose. So it's called autonomy. Are you familiar with autonomy? Right? Like today, you chose to come to this session, right? You could have chose to go elsewhere, so you're more likely to show up for what you choose to go to and what you choose to, or what you enjoy. So again, these individuals then participated in a 45-minute regularly scheduled class that was led by a well-trained instructor. Again, remember these themes, okay? Persistent time or longevity of the condition, and trained instructors. They also had to do some psychological batteries before and after the exercise condition. And what we found is that state anxiety levels decreased with all conditions. So this is their state anxiety before exercise. In the deep water, this is post-exercise. Pre-shallow water, post-shallow. Again, pre-step aerobics, post. This is also a consistent finding with some athletes, pre and post event, but there's probably other mechanisms that are responsible for that. This is looking at elevated changes in mood. So if you're familiar with POMS or profile mood states, it's just a psychological questionnaire. We use this a lot with athletes as well, and we look at these constructs down here at the bottom. So if you look at tension, depression, anger, vigor, fatigue, and confusion, the majority of these are negative, what we would call negative constructs. So you don't want to have a high tension score. You don't want to have a high depression score. And if you look at these before exercise conditions, where they were. And then what happened after exercise was a big decrease. If you were to flip this chart over, which I started to do that, but I thought I would just mess everything up if I did, what you will see is kind of what we call a classic iceberg profile. And that is a healthy profile that we see in healthy, physiologically and psychologically elite performers. And again, it's called this classic iceberg profile. This is completely the opposite of that. But if you look post-exercise, these individuals are starting to make that transition. So again, positive changes on negative variables, and again, a positive change on positive variables as well. So vigor went up, anger went down, depression went down in all three conditions. Okay, again, so that's water versus land. So again, small to large psychological benefits, depending on the baseline. Again, as I said earlier, generally people do not gravitate toward high-intensity exercise. When it's real hard, they're not as inclined to continue with it. Most of you in here, I'm sure, are quite avid exercisers, right? Swimmers and the same. It's part of what you've done for a long time. Any competitive athletes in here? Yeah, so again, you've been trained to work at those intensities. A lot of people have not, and they don't like it. But very interesting, these individuals preferred higher intensities. Now, why? I'm not real certain. Maybe it's just the fact that they're more experienced exercisers. Again, they were instructor-led. Some of the comments we're going to read here in a minute. But again, so conclusions, vigorous exercise is equally as effective psychologically based on either land or water-based versus land-based, sorry. And again, adults can engage in highly vigorous water exercise but still have positive emotional benefits. So again, sometimes people exercise and get their energy up, and it can stress them out. So what they found here was it didn't. It actually made them feel better. So exercise makes us a little better, healthier, right? A little healthier. Makes us better cognitively, we hope. What we're thinking, what we're seeing, it seems to be a positive effect. But what do we do to get those effects? So I can send any of you out to do any type of exercise program, check back in with you in a few months, and you're probably going to have improvements. Now, can I say that you should just only do water exercise? No, I shouldn't. I can't say that, and I don't think any of you can either. So why do we really want to try and promote aquatic-based exercise? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and some of them were discussed this morning. So changes on postural effects in the water, changes on joint load, forces, people who are coming back from rehab. A lot of therapists you've heard today talk about using aquatic therapy. And that's something that we all should do. It's a great transition from rehab to some type of movement that can maybe get you to land. So yes, it's great to learn or get back to walking in the water, but eventually you've got to walk on land, right? So it's a great tool, and we should promote it. But how do we get people to stick? So that's the problem. It doesn't matter if it's effective. If people don't show up, it doesn't matter. How do we get them to come back? Water tends to be very forgiving. Who enjoys getting in the water? Who has water running around, those little waterfalls in their house, right? I tried to do that. I'm not as tech savvy as some people, where you can get those little videos to play music, and I was going to have water kind of going in the background. So imagine a nice waterfall, relaxing, right? Right? People have sung about water, right? The Van Morrison song, right? Oh, the water, yeah. Okay, so it makes us feel good, right? Are you really sore after you've been after getting out of the pool? Anybody get a lot of muscle soreness afterwards? Why not? Probably not a whole lot, but think about the average person. Why not? You said it this morning. It's that gravity or lack thereof, right? What causes muscle soreness? Eccentric loading, right, of the muscles. There's not as much eccentric loading in the water because of the gravity, all right? So people don't tend to have as much muscle soreness. And again, I'm kind of preaching to the choir today. We are of the population that 20% that we hope participates in regular activities. 20% at best. So we got to get to the 80%. And how do we get to that 80%? We have to find what motivates them. What motivates you is not what motivates you. And I can do that for all of us in the room. We all have different values. We all have different belief systems. And those are what feed into our motivation. But some things that do help with motivation, right, is this autonomy, which I mentioned earlier, right? Your choice in doing something that you choose to do. Relatedness. So we're all aquatics people. It's a conference. It's like a little community right here. Competency, right? Being able to master a skill. Who in here has participated in some sport or activity that you were not able to master? Right? Baseball. I was right after Title 9 and all that stuff, and girls can play with the boys. Mom signed my sister and I up, so we get to play Little League Baseball with all the guys. I was terrible. Every time I got up to bat, I took a ball right to the back. You know, if I had $1 for every time I heard take a base, I wouldn't have to be here today. I could retire. But I hated sport. I hated baseball. I hate anything with what I call projectiles. Most people call them balls. I'm not any good with that. So do I pursue activities that have balls flying around? No. I am as far from the field, I'm serious, as I can be. It's going to hit me. I'm not going to be around. I don't seek those out. Some people do. Who picks up basketball on the weekends? How'd I know? Right? How did I know? So, I'm not a master of projectile sports. But there are things that I can do, and I gravitate toward those. And I do feel competent on some things. When you have competency, when you feel like you're really successful at something, maybe somebody high-fived you, maybe you just felt good about it, right? Maybe you got a trophy, maybe that will motivate you. Who got trophies when they were kids? You still got them all on the shelves, right? Go back home, there they are. Right. So these are some other things that contribute to people participating or not, all right? Socioeconomic status, social support. Who works out with a buddy? Okay? If they don't show, do you still show? All right, good. You're stuck. Good job. All right? But there's a caveat to that, to the buddy system. Sometimes they let you down and then you don't follow through either. But for the most part, social support is very important when we're talking about adherence. Access to facilities, with pools, I've prescribed aquatic programming and training for people for years because it is so forgiving. It is such a good environment. But how do you get to pools, right? Pools are hard to get access to, especially if we're talking warm therapy pools. Perceived lack of time. Who didn't have time to work out this morning, right? Who could have maybe made time to work out this morning, right? So those are our perceptions. Contracts, self-efficacy, right? Feeling better about yourself. What is self-efficacy? The belief in yourself that you can do something with success, right? So, you become a master of a skill. You improve your self-efficacy. It's a cycle that tends to feed itself. And eventually, you're competent. You're motivated. It's going to drive you to continue on, right? So, self-motivation. It's positively related to adherence. The trick is that you got what you got. Right? You can't change it too much. However, there are some other things called exercise cognitions, and we won't talk about them too specifically, but they're essentially self-identity, physical self-concept, exercise self-schemata, and physical self-perceptions. All of these constructs here, all right, and again, if we're talking like tension and vigor, those are constructs. Those are psychological abstractions that we measure. These constructs constructs all help to differentiate between physically active and inactive people. All right? So that's important. So this study was conducted by Hardcastle and Taylor in order, what they were looking at to regulate exercise, if people could regulate exercise behavior and if it was related to psychological well-being. And what they did is it was a small study, and Janet here this morning said she doesn't like qualitative data, she's into quantitative data. And that's important. It is good to have those numbers, right? It's hard to argue with numbers. But qualitative data is important as well, all right? Especially when we're talking about people's perceptions of themselves, because they're constructs. You really can't measure them too well. So this study was a 10-week, again, fairly lengthy time, 2 times per week, supervised exercise sessions, right? So again, instructor-led, supervised, teaching them what to do. Again, they were given assessments on health, fitness, and then given some perceptions and goals, exercise perceptions and goals. What they found was that the exercise program created change in confidence, feelings of control, independence, having priorities, having meaning in their life. All of those are significant in exercise becoming self-reinforcing. Telling people that exercise makes them healthy is not an adherent to the behavior. People don't care. Now, they probably do, but it doesn't motivate them to participate. We've seen that in clinical populations. The clinicians in here could probably tell me it's no different than it is in the fitness or wellness community. 50% is our best adherence rate that we can get. Most people drop out of their exercise program within 6 to 8 weeks. So, all these studies were beyond those. All right? It was trying to get people past that hurdle. Specifically, within this study, Hardcastle and Taylor found that exercise identity involved prioritizing and promoting exercise to others. So these are some quotes from some of the individuals in the study. And one was, I want to stick to it and not let anything get in the way. Now, these people were not exercising prior to this study. So it made a change in this person's perception and what was a priority for them. It was only last week that I began to feel that I was master of the situation. Now, I didn't pick and choose these quotes for a reason, right? Yes, I did. Master, right? Mastery of a skill. Feeling successful. Social benefits, right? Communication stuff. Coming out and seeing people. It's a good thing. What happens to people in their 60s? Retirement. Okay? And then Janet. So, isolation, right? So you retire from work, and everyone, we all look forward to a good retirement, right? Not having to go to work, have time on our hands, right? But that's just it. Time on our hands. To do what? These are individuals that didn't have these behaviors before. So it wasn't more time for them to participate in that. So again, mastery of a skill. Finding activities that you can gravitate toward because you enjoy them and persist with them over time. Again, another one, it gets you back into life. Again, so qualitative data is still important. We can't put a number on these, but it does speak volumes, right? Here are some findings, qualitative findings from the Ragland study. So from the individuals in the deep water, I can go at my own pace. This is why they like the exercise. Friends, better emotional outcome. I feel the best mentally and physically. Easy on joints, easy on knees. No pounding on my body. Instructor pushes me to work harder. Forced to maintain intensity throughout workout. It doesn't feel like I'm sweating. It's hard to feel that sweat in the water, isn't it? The element, you sweat, you still sweat. The element of play. Play, fun, right? Okay. It doesn't seem like exercise. I'm still working hard, but there isn't as much pain, right? Which we shouldn't be experiencing pain with exercise, right? Entertaining and challenging. Balance, toning, and land weights. Fun. Okay? So, what is this? Who's heard of the dimensions of wellness? All right, so depending on where you're going, where you're looking, your information, there's as many as 7 up to 15 dimensions of wellness. This is just the basic 7 dimensions of wellness. And what we have is physical, social, environmental, spiritual, mental, and then emotional. Within the middle there, you've got self. So go back to those exercise cognitions, right? Exercise identity, self-identity, right? That study had positive findings in all those individuals' identity of themselves. So how do people identify with themselves when they're physically active or not? If people do not have a good physical self-concept, they're not going to show up at a pool. They're not going to show up at an exercise program. And in order to get the benefits, as you've seen, you have to be persistent with the behavior. One bout of exercise or an acute bout of exercise might make a change for the day, but doesn't make a change for the next day without performing the behavior. So again, you have to get people to do persistent activity. And you can see I did pick pictures with water from what I could. I didn't really want to put a picture with water on the brain because that's hydrocephalic and we don't want that. But again, it's about trying to find programs or teaching programs that are well led. So, mastery of a skill. On that one big long list, I also had knowledge of performance and knowledge of results. For feedback, who's familiar with feedback? Who's been a coach? Did you tell your athletes what they were doing right? What they were doing wrong? Did you tell them right then? So you've done this a while. That's the best time to give people feedback, right? Right then. That way they can map it to something, right? It's essentially transfer, right? Take it from here right to there. So this morning, sitting through some of the sessions, I kind of kept hearing a few words kind of mentioned a few times. So someone talked about transfer of learning, or mentioned it in a roundabout way. Someone mentioned essentially association or dissociation in a roundabout way. So when you guys get in the pool, does it make you feel better? Most of you said yes earlier, right? Why is that? Okay. Home. All right. Who else? Anybody else have anything? Anecdotal? Qualitative? Right? Nothing?
I feel confident there. I know what I'm doing there.
Feel confident? Know what you're doing? All right. So I didn't put her here. She's actually doing all this, saying all this on her own. She's not a plant. So what am I getting to? So all of those studies had instructor-led. It's about training. I'm a memory person, learning, right? What does it take to get someone to learn a behavior? Because that's what this is. It's a behavior. If all of you get up and participate in your activities, the same routine day after day, you establish a behavior. The way you sit is a behavior. The way you walk, right? Whether or not you actively and regularly participate in exercise, that is a behavior. And it's important that people learn and establish them early on. They need mastery of skill, so you need a well-trained instructor to teach whatever it is you're going to teach them. They need feedback. They need to feel successful. They need to be able to take whatever it is you're teaching them and transfer it to every day. So, for instance, this morning, it was Marty. She was talking about the gait sequence in water versus gait sequence on land. Yes, there's some changes, right? It's a different environment, gravity versus limited gravity, okay? So people walk differently when they get in the water, right? She said the first few times they're in there, it's harder for, they have to kind of learn the environment. They have to learn the environment. Who's heard neuroplasticity? Has anybody heard that word? What is neuroplasticity? It's learning. It's a fancy word to say learning, okay? Because PhDs and researchers, we have to get fancy and complicated, and we have to put our own spin on it, and so we change the word, right? But neuroplasticity is learning. Hippocampal changes, right? That is a structural change to your brain. That's measured through essentially fMRI, so neuroimaging, right, or PET scans. So those are things that are quantitatively measured. qualitatively, we see the changes in people's behavior. They persistently stick with it over time. Again, I'm trying to drive a point here. Train people well. Get them to find activities for people. Some people need help finding activities to gravitate to. Make them feel successful at that. They have to feel successful. Who has gone up in front of a ball and not felt successful and didn't go back, right? You don't want to get hit by that ball. So you've got to set people up for success. Water is a great place to do it. It's a forgiving environment. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it is an important mode of exercise, and it does have benefits. Well, I thank you very much. Have a great rest of your evening. Enjoy your sessions tomorrow.